beaded necklace, you'll need beads. And we have 31 beads that are all different from each other. That's the theme of this necklace. They range in size from about 9 millimeters, these larger ones, 5 millimeters in the middle, and go all the way down to 3 millimeters. Some are crystal, some are gemstone, all different. And then we're going to put them together with some seed beads as the filler beads. This is size 11/0 seed beads in dark copper color. We're going to bead on our bead stringing wire. This is 19 strand bead stringing wire. It says it right on the package. And we chose a gold color. And all our findings are copper, but the gold color works just fine with that. We're going to use a lobster clasp as our clasp, and we're going to hook it to a piece of chain. We have 2 inches of this open loop chain. To put on the lobster clasp and the chain, we're going to use 2 clamshell bead tips, 2 little crimp beads, and 2 jump rings, all in copper. We also have a copper head pin, and that's for a little trick we'll show you at the end. To keep the beads from sliding off while we're working, we like using this Bead Bug. It's a little spring, and if you don't have that, you can use a piece of masking tape. For tools, we have chain nose pliers, we have round nose pliers, and we have wire cutters. To make this beaded necklace, the first thing we like to do is design how we want our beads to go and go ahead and arrange the beads. We have small beads and large beads. We have all different colors. So when we laid them out, we kind of went back and forth. Small, medium, large, small, medium, small. Made sure we didn't have too many blues next to each other, distributed the colors throughout. So we like how this looks. It's really fun. And this is 30 of our beads. We saved one bead, this little copper pearl bead, and that's for a little trick we're going to show you at the end. So I'm going to set that aside. And then I'm going to start with a piece of our bead stringing wire. We cut a 23-inch piece of that gold bead stringing wire, and we're going to use this as the base for the necklace. And to keep the beads from sliding off, I messed up my arrangement. To keep the beads from sliding off the end as we're putting the beads on, we're going to use a bead bug. And you can just clamp it on the end of your wire like that, and it just bites down on it. If you don't have a bead bug, you can fold a piece of masking tape over the end. And then that lets us bead the other end of the wire without having the beads slide off. Now, if these were the only beads on the necklace, it would be a very short necklace. We're going to, instead of doing that, intersperse some seed beads. So I'm going to just open up this little bag of seed beads here, this little canister. They come like this. There must be 1,000 more probably seed beads in this little container. And I'm just going to put some out in my hand like that. And this is how we like to put seed beads on a necklace. The idea is we're going to put about 1.5 inches of seed beads at the beginning of the necklace, and that's where the clasp will be. It will be behind your neck, so you don't need to put a lot of your fanciest beads back there where no one's going to see them. And then we're going to intersperse the seed beads a couple at a time between each of these fancy little beads. So I'm just fishing those onto the wire. I tip each bead onto the end of the wire. This bead string wire is pretty stiff, so it actually has enough body to push right up into the beads. So I have about 1 inch on there. I'm going to put a few more on. With bigger beads, we always say how many we used, like 30 of these mixed beads. With seed beads, you don't really want to be counting out how many make 1.5 inches. So sometimes with seed beads, we just say how many inches worth. And we're just measuring it when it's on the string. All together, all the beads are pressed together. It'll be about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to slide those beads down to the end here, like that. And that's a perfect start for our necklace. If we want more later, we can add them at the other end because we haven't put the clasp on yet. But this is how we're going to start our necklace. And then I'm going to go back to the other end here. I'm still gripping these seed beads in my hand. This is a little bead handling trick. I can sort of grip the seed beads in my hand like that, and that way I don't have to set them down and pick them up repeatedly. And then there's my wire, and I'm going to start at this end, and I'm going to feed on my first bead. And we'll let that one slide down the wire, and then add a couple of these seed beads to go in between that bead and the next one. And for these in-between sections, I think it'd be fun to go 3 sometimes, 3 little seed beads, or maybe sometimes you do 4, maybe sometimes 5, and then maybe you go back to 3 again. And this is a pretty little green faceted bicone. It's probably about a 3 or 4 millimeter bead. And we're going to slide that on. I'll let you see what that looks like. So that's the little seed beads in between. And then I can go back to the other end and put on more seed beads. So I think I did 3 seed beads last time. I'll do 4 this time. And the idea is we're just mixing it up. It's kind of a playful design that it has different colored beads and different style beads, and they're on, it looks almost random, although we really did plan out where they went. This is a metal copper round bead. It has multiple holes, so I have to make sure I go through the proper bead hole there. Slide that one on and slide on some more seed beads. These are my in-betweens. I'll do 3 just for no reason at all. And then put on another little bead. This is a great project for raiding your stash. We have so many beads. Why not use them up? And it's especially fun when you've had some pretty strand of beads and used it for a project and you have just a couple left over. This is something you can use all those little special beads for. Put on some more seed beads. This is 4 seed beads this time. And then I'm going to slide on this bigger bead. And so I'm just going to continue beading like this, putting on a few of the seed beads in between each one of these pretty beads. When I get to the end, I'll put on another 1.5 inches of seed beads, and then I'll be ready to put on the clasp. I've got all my beads on the bead stringing wire here, and it's looking really pretty, and I'm ready to put on the clasp. So I'm going to start at the end that doesn't have the bead bug on it, and I'm going to slide on our clamshell bead tip. This is a little metal finding. It's like a little metal clam with a loop and a hole in the bottom of the clam. And so what we want to do is we want to feed the wire in through the bottom of the clam like that. And I can just let that hang there. And then I want to take a crimp bead. So this is that tiny little metal crimp bead. This is probably a size 1 crimp bead. It's a small metal tube, and it's meant to be crushed or flattened onto the wire. And what I want to do is take my chain nose pliers and press that crimp bead flat on the wire like that. So it stays put there. When you press it hard, it stays put. I can sort of try to move it with my pliers, and you'll see it doesn't move. So what that does is it locks inside the clamshell. I can press the clamshell closed, but first I want to trim that wire. So I'm going to take my wire cutters and I'm just going to cut fairly close there to the crimp bead that we just crimped on there. And now I can take my chain nose pliers and press that clamshell closed over the crimp bead. And this is a hollow little finding, this hollow metal bead. So we don't want to press too hard, you might dent the bead. See how it looks like a bead now? Isn't that nice? And then if yours has an open loop like this, you can go ahead and just close that loop like that. Some people worry that it's going to come loose. We've never had a problem with that coming loose, but you can also buy these with a closed loop here if that's your concern. So now we've got that end finished, and we can put the jump ring onto that clamshell loop. And we're going to do that using our chain nose pliers. We're going to open a jump ring here. And you can do this with 2 pliers like this. I like to grasp across the pliers. I've got the opening at the top, and I'm going to push 1 pliers toward the table and keep 1 going towards the ceiling. And what that does is it opens the jump ring so that it still remains round. It keeps its round shape, but it makes an opening that we can slide into. So I can slide the lobster clasp on there, and then I can slide our loop from the clamshell bead tip on there, and then I can hold those two while I close the jump ring. And to do that, I can just press it closed like that. You want to make sure that you can't see any air between the ends of that jump ring, but that's why we kept the round shape. So we've got our clasp on one end here. That looks great. And now we're going to do the other end. The other end is slightly trickier. First, we're going to remove our bead bug. Thank you, Bead Bug, for your hard work. And we're going to slide the beads down. The only thing that's trickier about the second end is that you want to make sure there's no slack in your beads. Once you put the crimp on, if it has slack, you are going to have air in your beads. They're going to slide around, show the wire. You don't want that. So I'm pushing all the beads down. But then basically I'm repeating the same activity. I'm going to put on the clamshell bead tip first. You just have to go up through the center there. And then I'm going to put on the crimp bead next. Here's a little trick for working with the crimp bead. You can pick it up with your chain nose pliers like that. It makes it easier to handle it because it's so tiny. It makes it easier to put it on the wire. Turn it a little bit so I can see. Like that. But I'm not going to crimp it yet. I want these to slide all the way down. The other end of the necklace, it didn't matter where I crimped it, but this one I want to make sure there's no slack. So I'm actually going to have to reach inside the clamshell bead tip to get at that crimp bead and crimp it. It has to be inside the clamshell. So I'm reaching in and I'm going to press it closed. And then I want to make sure it's not going to move, so I'm just tugging on a little bit. That's good. It is pressed closed inside there. I can reach in and trim my wire as close as I can get. And now I can close the clam over the wire and the crimp bead like that. And I can close this loop like I did before. And on this end, we're going to put a little piece of chain. This is our 2-inch piece of chain. And we like to do this because it makes the necklace adjustable. You can hook the lobster clasp through any part of the chain. So we're going to attach that the same way we did the lobster clasp with this jump ring, holding it with 2 pairs of pliers, pushing one away, and that opens up that jump ring. And then I can keep holding on to the jump ring like this. That makes things a little bit easier. And I can feed on the end of my necklace like that. And I can feed on, let gravity help me with the chain like that. And then, as we did before, I can reach across the jump ring and close it like that. And there's our little adjustable chain. And you could leave it like this, but we like to put a little bead out here at the end. It just looks more finished. So that's what we saved that one little bead for. When I had all 31 beads out and arranged, I left this one separate. And I have a head pin here. I'm going to make a little dangle. That's what we call it, a little bead dangle. So I'm going to just slide that bead on to the head pin. And then I'm going to make a little wrapped loop at the top of this wire just above the bead, and I'm going to hook it through the last link in the chain. So to make that wrap loop, I pinch right above the bead on the wire and bend the wire 90 degrees. Then I move to the top of the wire and push the wire over like that. I have a partial loop now. I have to go to the bottom jaw in order to pull the wire all the way around to have a complete loop. So there's our loop. I can grab it across like this, but before I wrap this loop, I want to feed it onto the end of the chain. So I take that last link of the chain, slide it on, and I want to slide it past that little crisscross that we made, get it inside our loop. We got a nice tidy little loop there. Now it's hooked on, and I can grasp that loop, and then I can use my other pliers to pull the wire around 2 times. This wire is a little bit strong, otherwise I'd use my fingers, but I can feel it's kind of a thicker, heavier gauge wire. So I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to pull it around. I'm going to pull it around 2 times to make a wrap. But you can hear that it's kind of a hard wire, but that's okay. It looks great. I like the weight of it visually. Just a little elbow grease is all I needed. And now I can cut off this funny looking little wire end. I'm going to hold on to that piece so it doesn't fly off. So then this becomes our little end that you can clasp into, making this necklace adjustable. You can hook it anywhere. And then you have this very fun beaded necklace.